Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. Today is Wednesday, December 18th. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to go through a little bit of polling, new polling, Emerson polling, 7 News poll, national polling has Biden at 32%, Bernie Sanders at 25%, Warren 12%, Buttigieg at 8%, Andrew Yang at 6%, Gabbard at 4%. That 6 and 4 are very important at this point. Bloomberg at 3%, and everyone else below 2%. In Iowa, the breakdown, if we drill down just a little bit, we have Buttigieg, who's up 3 points according to the Real Clear Politics average of polls, at 22.5% for Buttigieg. Sanders is at 19.3%, Biden at 18%, and Warren at 16.3%. Buttigieg is hanging on desperately to the lead. In Iowa, Gabbard has 1.8%, and Yang has 2.5%. Again, those numbers are extremely important because while Sanders is within the margin of error of Andrew Yang, I think it's noteworthy that he would be clear outside of the margin of error in first place, if not for Gabbard and Yang. If we jump over to New Hampshire, we see that Bernie Sanders has a slight lead over Buttigieg, 19 points in New Hampshire for Sanders, 17.7% for Buttigieg, 14.3% for Biden, and 13.3% for Warren. Warren is having a bad go at it. I think it's because it's difficult for people to support her as she wavers and continuously shifts on Medicare for all. Also in New Hampshire, where Tulsi Gabbard has gone to set up shop, she has moved to New Hampshire. She is there trying her best to get as many points as she can. She's moved to New Hampshire, and right now she is polling at 5.7 points. But anyway, I've warned over and over and over again of the danger that Tulsi Gabbard in particular poses to Bernie Sanders because of the overlap in her audiences and because of the irresponsible support that Bernie Sanders supporters give her based on this notion that she is somehow in league with Bernie Sanders when she is literally poised to sandbag Bernie Sanders. I've gone over that over and over again. I'm not even here to discuss that today. I want to come up a little bit and point out something that is that actually I saw Cenk Uygur point out on Twitter that I think is worthwhile. Bernie Sanders is polling at 75% approval, at a 75% approval rating amongst Democrats, the highest of any Democrat. And this is notable because he's getting the most pushback from the Democratic Party. And I guess that's to be expected, but I want to read the tweet from Cenk so that I give proper credit. He said Bernie Sanders has 75% approval rating amongst Democratic voters, highest of any of the candidates. Is the media ever going to do any introspection about why they hate the one candidate the people love so much the most? Actually, I want to not point this towards the media. I want to point this towards the Democratic establishment. And the fact that it is not just the media that's complicit with the pushback against Bernie Sanders, but also the Democratic establishment. There are pages popping up. And I told you earlier this week that it's going to be easier for the establishment, for centrists and for Republicans to label Bernie Sanders an anti-Semite than it is for those of us who support Bernie Sanders to label the hatred towards him to be anti-Semitic. That's the unbelievable world that we live in right now. But I only mention that because there are pages that are being propped up by Neera Tanden from Center American Progress, Twitter pages that are in their bio tell you that they are never Bernie and they are against anti-Semitism. Neera Tanden is the quintessential establishment player right now, right? And so in context of what Cenk tweeted out about how Bernie Sanders can be so popular, but so many people oppose him, so many people in the media, I actually want to point out how hard the establishment is working against him. period. Because as popular as he is amongst voters, the establishment is doing its very best to freeze him out. We'll see if Barack Obama jumps in this, like it was reported about 2 weeks ago around Thanksgiving that Barack Obama was going to jump in if Bernie Sanders starts doing so well. But I also want to kind of juxtapose that conversation with Pete Buttigieg and how much unbelievable support this mayor has. Not that anything's wrong with being a mayor, but that's all he's done and worked for McKinley. But he has all the support. And then you see the pictures. If you saw the pictures of the fundraiser in the wine cave that he had over the weekend, you would realize that there are two different parties. That's ultimately what I'm getting to. There are two Democratic parties. There is the party of the establishment. There's a party of the uber elite. There's a party of the millionaire and billionaires who just happen to be, I guess, socially liberal, or, maybe they just want to fight for LGBTQ rights and fight for the environment. Maybe, so long as the fight for the environment doesn't infringe on their bottom lines and their investments that they have in energy companies. You have that party, the party that has been in Washington, D.C. since Clinton took office in 92. You have that Democratic establishment, and they hate Bernie Sanders. And they hate him. This is not about him. And I guess that's why his slogan actually makes sense, not me, us. It's not about him so much as it is who he's fighting for, and the policies that he's fighting for are for the average person. So the real question isn't why the Democratic Party hates Bernie Sanders so much. The real question is, why does the establishment Democratic Party hate policies that help people? That's the question. Why? The answer is because of the donor class. Now, there is tension in the reality that, as it stands now, most politicians have to raise money by going through the donor class. And most politicians, Democratic politicians, while they may have been idealistic at some point, they begin to capitulate to the donor class, who wants to make sure that the status quo basically remains the same. Maybe let's just get rid of some racism. Maybe let's just get rid of some homophobia. Maybe let's get rid of some transphobia. But those things are flexible because we would rather have those things and our bottom lines be intact than to do policy that's going to hurt our bottom line. So there's a clear divide in the Democratic Party. The people support policies. It's not about a cult of personality. It's not about fawning over an individual. It's about fawning over policies that will help the average person. Another case in point, if I could bring back the sticker shock that I got from the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, the average deductible I saw reported by CNN was $7,000. And so you have people in the establishment, the Democratic establishment, who are okay with that because either they have $7,000 that they can blow, or they have insurance from their employer that is like basically free to them. But they don't want to shake the boat up too much because they either work in the healthcare industry as an insurance, on the insurance side, or they have investments in it. And so we have a tension there between the donor class and the politicians who run to get support from the donor class because they have to raise money. Because if you don't raise money to win elections, then you don't win elections. And between the small donor fundraising machine that Bernie Sanders has created and that other organizations have created. And the only way to address this issue of how there is an establishment that is completely separate from the people is by making sure that as many politicians as possible can benefit from the small donor machine. We have to fund our own revolution. We have to put our own dollars into it. We have to make sure that the politicians who want to fight for the people can be funded by the people, because if they have to compete in a world where Buttigieg can go into a wine cellar and raise $1 million or whatever the hell he raised, and they want to, and this politician, this hypothetical politician wants to fight on behalf of the people, well, they'll be fighting on behalf of the people from Twitter. Because that's all they'll be able to afford. So the answer to the question, Jake, well, I'm kind of change the question. It's not even about the media to me so much. Well, actually, it's the same thing, right? Let's extend this to the media. It's because the media is the establishment, because the media benefits from the establishment. The media can't afford to have policies that are raise taxes on millionaires and billionaires, because they are millionaires and their owners are billionaires. And so if we want politicians that aren't bought by big donors, then we have to fund them with small donations. And if we want media that isn't controlled and beholden to billionaires and millionaires and defense contractors, then we have to fund media with small donors to ensure the independence of media.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
All right. It's that time again of every show where we thank our patrons. Here we go. Special welcome to our newest patrons, Liz B. Thank you so much for becoming a patron. Also, a very special thank you to Yahani Yisrael. Thank you very much for becoming a patron. And last but not least, one that I missed yesterday because it didn't come up in my normal notifications. Special thank you to Brandon Crossway. Thank you for increasing your pledge. All of you are the MVPs, and all of you listening who are not a part. If you haven't had your special dedication over the patron music, I think it's something that you should treat yourself to for Christmas. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and become a patron. Join this prestigious and this prodigious family, and then join us over in the Discord where we just kind of kick it. I am actually tied up on a major project right now, which is why I'm not in Discord all the time. But I am in there at least once a day, and it's growing, and more and more patrons are going there. And eventually, I think probably after the new year, we'll open it up to all the listeners. But for now, go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and become a patron today. So the House is getting ready to start floor debate on the articles of impeachment that were sent out of committee last week. And yesterday, Donald Trump. So, I mean, this letter that Donald Trump sent to Nancy Pelosi is unbelievable. I just want to read a couple of lines from it to show you how ridiculous this president is and how dangerous he is to this democracy, not just because of him, but because of the hyper-partisan support that he gets from his party. Had this been another time, you would have seen Republicans who would have stood by the Constitution. If this had been another president, then you surely would have seen Republicans defend the Constitution. But this is not the same time, and this is a Republican president, and so they have decided that this is dead on arrival. Well, listen to who they're defending. He said, "It is a terrible thing that you're doing, but you will have to live with it, not I." He said, "Even worse than offending the founding fathers, you are offending Americans of faith by continually saying that you pray for the president when you know the statement is not true unless you meant it in a negative sense." He said also, "You dare invoke the founding fathers in pursuit of this election nullification scheme? By proceeding with your invalid impeachment, you are violating your oath of office. You are breaking your allegiance to the Constitution, and you're declaring open war on American democracy." That language in particular is extremely dangerous. It said, "You have cheapened the importance of the very ugly word impeachment." I'm sorry. Okay, well, I guess it could be important and ugly, but that sentence still doesn't make sense. He said, "This impeachment represents an unprecedented and unconstitutional abuse of power by Democratic lawmakers, unequaled in nearly 2.5 centuries of American legislative history." Now, I don't think that it's necessary for you, my audience, for me to unpack the logical fallacies here. I hope that you could just see them at face value. Because tell me this. The Constitution actually gives them the ability. It is their constitutional duty to impeach this president. In fact, I was Kevin Cruz, I believe is his last name, and a historian that I follow on Twitter. They have put out a letter of 1,500 historians who essentially say that if Donald Trump is not impeached, that it is a threat to our system. I want to read it more precisely. He said more than 750, originally it's 1,500 now. More than 1,500 historians have signed a statement calling on the House to impeach Donald Trump. And they said, quote, "It is our considered judgment that if President Trump's misconduct does not rise to the level of impeachment, then virtually nothing does." That's the important part. That's why it's necessary. That's why no matter what you think of the Democrats, I honestly want to see the Democratic establishment completely 100%, 100% changed and replaced by progressives. But they had a response. They had to impeach this president. He was laughing in the face of the country. And I disagree with the Democratic establishment because they only impeached him around Ukraine. When after he has fleeced the American people to the tune of, I don't know, probably up to $175 million now that he has used to take himself on trips to golfing trips. You know, there's so many other reasons. The obstruction of justice. There's so many things that you lay down. They could have been impeaching Donald Trump for the next year. So I disagree with the approach, but I agree that they had a fundamental responsibility based on the Constitution to impeach this president. Okay, let's keep going. He said, "Now you're trying to impeach me." This is the continuation in the letter, the Unhinged letter. He said, "Now you're trying to impeach me by falsely accusing me of doing what Joe Biden has admitted he actually did." No, see, Trump, you admitted it. You admitted it in the Rose Garden. Your chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, admitted it to the press corps. I mean, the evidence, there's witnesses. Anyway, we know this. Let's see. He said, "Your chosen candidate lost the election in 2016 in an electoral college landslide, and you and your party have never recovered from this defeat. You have developed a full-fledged case of what many in the media call the Trump derangement syndrome." This is the president of the United States, folks. This is the president of the United States of America sending an official letter that sounds just like his Twitter feed, which we should not kind of casually just accept that his Twitter feed is going to sound like this because he's the president of the United States of America. It's not about decorum. It's not about civility. It's about understanding the power that your words have and the ability that the ability that you have to inflame the American people. An already divided electorate that's been unbelievably hyper partisan as a result of the news media, as a result of politicians. I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg in this case. I honestly, no, I do know. It is a result of Republican media that Republican politicians have had to capitulate to a foaming at the mouth electorate that has been driven to madness because of conservative media. And so we're in this unbelievably strange time where now you have a president who is able to say the wildest things from his bully pulpit to an electorate that is so hyper partisan that they will literally be willing to go into a civil war to defend this president, not to defend the Constitution. And you have this president who does this on Twitter on a regular basis, now bringing it to the official letterhead of the White House. I do not want to minimize the damage that he has done via Twitter, but also look at the escalation. Look at what we have coming from the official White House Twitter account. The destruction, the devastating damage that this president has done to the office of the presidency, to the White House, to this democracy, that was an impeachable offense. But they waited for Ukraine. They got Ukraine. And it is an open and shut case. But even though it's an open and shut case because of the nature of our politics, because of the nature of the hyperpartisanship, because of the conservative media, because of the intransigent Republican Party who absolutely put Donald Trump above the Constitution, not only are they not going to find him guilty in the Senate, but they're willing to burn this country to the ground. And Donald Trump, with all of his words in this letter, seems to be willing to lead them to that reality.
worry today when I read that only about a third of Americans can name the three branches of government. And 10% of Americans apparently believe that Judith Sheindlin serves on the United States Supreme Court. Now, you know her as Judge Judy. And I love Judge Judy, but she is not one of my colleagues.
Bruh. And that's the only thing I can start this segment with. That is the voice of Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch, who was appointed by Donald Trump after Mitch McConnell refused for an entire year to give President Barack Obama a hearing on his candidate, on his nominee, Merrick Garland. Neil Gorsuch, that's the voice you heard on Fox and Friends yesterday morning. A sitting Supreme Court justice went on one of the most hyper-partisan shows in this country, on the most hyper-partisan network in this country, to promote a book. And in the midst of promoting a book, he also promoted this far right-wing conspiracy theory that pops up every single year this time of year about the war on Christmas and the ability to say Merry Christmas. First of all, if Chief Justice Roberts doesn't come get his boy, because, I mean, our courts, I guess it doesn't even matter at this point, right? I was going to say our courts have to have the appearance of being nonpartisan. They have to have that appearance, because then they lose all their validity. All their decisions will be looked at as political decisions. And without the appearance, I'm putting the emphasis on appearance, without the appearance of being nonpartisan, then most of their decisions can be dismissed or invalidated, if not, obviously not in terms of in actuality, but in terms of public opinion. And so once the court is no longer respected, then because that's all they have, right? They don't have their own enforcement. People obey, people conform to the decisions of the Supreme Court out of custom. But I throw that away. I throw that entire argument away because we're well past that Rubicon. We're well past that. We're at the point where all the masks are off, and they can be as hyper-partisan as they are, as they always have been. That's one of the problems of our political system, is that we act as though our judicial system is nonpartisan when it has never been nonpartisan. You may have moments of nonpartisan decisions. You may have moments where justices rise above their partisanship, but they are appointed. They are appointed by politicians. And now these two, particularly Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, they have been appointed by a president who behind the scenes has demanded of other people loyalty. And so now they have cover in the executive branch, because the executive branch is bucking all of the norms and institutions, all of the customs, all of the behaviors of previous presidents that help sustain this democracy in the midst of the reality that it is fragile beyond belief. Donald Trump says, F all that. I'm going to do it my way. And he has proven the fragility of our system. And now, to compound the damage, all of his little sycophantic supporters, and even those who are on the Supreme Court, like Neil Gorsuch, are breaking all sorts of norms, protocols, and traditions and customs, the customs that help protect this democracy. The most important thing out of everything that I'm saying is this, that there are too many things about our democracy that depended on the willing participation of the players, of the people involved. And without that willing participation, that willing conformity, then you begin to unravel this democracy. And that's what Trump has initiated. And that's what Neil Gorsuch's appearance on Fox indicates. Okay, one last conversation before we get out of here and I take these kids to school. Ava DuVernay, the famed director, black woman, She shared an image of Trump's job approval rating from September. And I don't think that this has changed that much, but I want to share it and have the conversation about the subtext of what she was saying. Amongst black men, Donald Trump has a 15% approval rating, unbelievably high. Black women, 3%. Hispanic men, what's up with you guys? 37%. Hispanic women, 23%. White men, 54%, and white women at 42%. When I said yesterday that black women are the backbone of the Democratic Party, it was the other day. I was not being sarcastic. I wasn't trying to be ironic. I was being literal. Black women are the backbone of the Democratic Party. Black men are not too far behind. I'm just completely amazed at that 12% gap. But no. Let me be fair. I go to plenty of barbershops and I understand the barbershop political philosophy, and I understand the barbershop theology. It's very interesting. Some of these people include, well, never mind. I'm not going to bring up the Hoteps or the Black Israelites. Anyway, the Democratic Party is dependent on the black vote in an unbelievable fashion. Unbelievable fashion. But yet you're going to find very few leaders in the Democratic Party establishment machine. You're going to see a couple of black elected officials, because they're black districts that have been gerrymandered, and you're going to get black elected officials from those districts. But in terms of the party machine, you're going to find very few black people. You're also going to find an establishment that's willing to turn on black people at the drop of a dime if we step outside of the bounds of what's acceptable for the Democratic Party, particularly when it comes to running on populism or running as a party insider like Pete Buttigieg. We saw it in the New Jersey, I believe it was the 2nd district, with Jeff Van Drew was the pick of the DCCC against a black woman progressive. What I'm saying is a conversation that I've been having for a long time. With the Republican Party pouring all the money that it can spare into the black community, into buying black voices, into black media, into promoting people like Candace Owens, Diamond and Silk, and with them doing that on one side of the equation. But then on the other side of the equation, you see a noticeable void of black faces, black representation, black issues, a black agenda. You really stand a chance of losing these margins. Whether or not they go to vote for Trump or not, that's totally, I can't say that they will, but what will happen is what has been discussed over and over again, not only on my show, but on so many platforms. Without a clear black agenda, without being willing to do something for black people besides just put up a couple of black faces that protect your establishment, you're not going to, you can't depend on white women. 42% of them support Trump. You cannot depend on white men. 54% of them support Trump. You can't depend on Hispanic women. Maybe, sort of, a quarter of them support Donald Trump. Hispanic men, more than a third support Trump. The only vote that you can consistently count on in this race against Donald Trump is the black vote. So riddle me this, Batman. Don't you think it's about time for you to throw Democratic Party everything that you have into making sure that you don't lose a single point in the black vote? Because if your people, your white people, love you, mean it. But if your white voters have not decided by now that Donald Trump is detrimental to their bottom line, especially if they're poor, if Donald Trump is not, if they don't know by now that Donald Trump is full of shit, then they are not going to know it by the time it's time to vote in 2020. Let me say it a little clearer. If your kinfolks, white folks, aren't turned off by Donald Trump yet, they will never be turned off by Donald Trump, and they are going to run excitedly to the polls to support him. But we're still in this place where we're playing this game of Can we convince some moderate conservative voters to come away from Trump? You have not been able to do that even with Bill Clinton. And now they've gotten them a candidate that lets them be their full racist selves, their full Islamophobic selves. And they're proud of it because they can go to rally. There's no longer any shame attached to the bigotry of the Republican Party. Donald Trump dispensed with all of that. So who are you going to run to? Apparently you have an expectation that you're just going to get the black vote. But can I tell you, black folks have been voting not with you or for you, but against the Republican Party. And that share of the black vote that you've been getting has been declining every year. So unless you put all hands on deck, come up with direct policies. See, here's the fear. They are afraid of something that is true. The more directly you support black issues, the more infuriated your white base will get. And because Democrats are not ready to confront that in their own base, they're willing to risk losing us at the overperformance that we give them, at the rate that we overperform. They're willing to lose that overperformance that they need from the black vote because they don't want to rock the boat. So the true story is whichever candidate, moving it away from the Democratic establishment, but whichever candidate makes the greatest appeal to black voters wins, period. It's in the numbers. That's why they have Iowa go first. That's why they don't start in the South. Julian Castro has been talking about this for so long, and he's right. I don't agree with him on a couple of key policies. If Julian Castro got his policies with regards to Palestine and Israel correct, and he got his policies with regard to Medicare for all correct, then I think I would support him, but he doesn't, so I don't. But one thing that he is right about is the importance of the black vote to the Democratic Party, and the fact that the reason we go through Iowa and New Hampshire first and Nevada first before we get to South Carolina, well, it's kind of to create a momentum that is not as impacted by the black vote as the disproportionate share of the black vote that the Democratic Party needs suggests that we should have. But that's okay. That's fine. We can't change that in 2020, but you still have to go through South Carolina. So we'll see you in South Carolina.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.